offload your current provider and come to Q Streaming. Get access to over 1,000 local and live TV channels and most series and movies found on multiple streaming platforms. Consolidate them all in one place with Q. By supporting Q, you are supporting the kingdom and ministries like ours. You'll unlock earlier access to our podcasts and content exclusive to Q alone. Scan the QR code for more information.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to Circle of Eden podcast. I am Jenness White, and I am so excited for today. We have a very special guest, and it is one that I have interviewed multiple times during my time at His Glory TV. And so he is now back on Circle of Eden. His name is Bill Smith. He is the CEO of FirePoint Energy. His career includes more than 20 years working in the alternative energy technology sector, including hydrogen energy, ethanol, and others. He has found a new source of potentially free energy that some believe tie in with the late prophet Kim Clement and some of his prophetic words. And I also have with me today Jordan Oliver from the Olive Press. She's going to be joining me to ask some questions. And so without any further ado, let me bring on my two guests and we will jump into today's segment. Bill, thank you so much for being here today. And Jordan, always a pleasure having you on as my co-host. So thank you guys so much. I think this is very important, the information that we're going to be talking about today, and totally orchestrated by God.
Yes, absolutely. Hi, Jen, and hi, Bill. This is my first interview with Bill. I know, Jen, that the two of you have interviewed multiple times. So I am truly honored to get to be part of this conversation today. So it's exciting.
Well, honor having you, and I'm sure you're going to think of questions I haven't thought of, so this is perfect. So Bill, since we have a new audience, I know our His Glory audience was used to seeing you. You've been on with us a couple times. So we just want to start today actually at the end of your story, and then we're going to bounce back to the beginning. But so we're going to start at the end, everybody, and that is where you are today. Bill, tell everybody about FirePoint Energy and just the basics of what it is you guys are doing there.
Well, in a nutshell, I've been looking at ways to convert waste streams into useful forms of energy, whether it was a fuel or electricity or whatever, because I believe, we need to do better things than just pile garbage up in a landfill. We need to do better things than piling up coal in the mountains here. I'm in a place called Tunnelton, Pennsylvania. Would have never imagined being here in my life. I'm here because back in 2021, we were building a plasma gasifier, doing the engineering work on it in Texas. And some guys called us up and said, hey, can you do waste coal? And we're like, sure, why? It's got rare earth elements. And we're like, cool, what's that? I didn't know what they were. Long story short, I did a lot of research into what's called hydrometallurgy, and our global demand for what are called rare earths is growing up because of electric cars, your smartwatches, and so on. So I came to Pennsylvania looking at waste coal piles literally across the entire state, taking samples to the lab, looking at the rare earth elements, which every site in Pennsylvania had those. And the other part we had was, how do we get the rare earth elements out? So we had to look at that science. But along the way, we also had stuff called waste coal that we could turn into jet fuel. So it became a win-win all the way around. I was actually at a point of leaving Pennsylvania, and the attorney I was talking to because of another project said, I've got this little site down in Tunnelton that's got 4 million tons of waste coal. And I'm like, God, I'm done with PA. Goodbye. Go back to Texas. And it was kind of like, well, go down and look at it. Like, So I came down here, and when I stepped on the property, I don't know, fell in love with the place. Even though it had been abandoned for like 13 years, it was a jungle. There were no roads hardly. They were all grown over. And I was like, okay. So I go back and I said, all right, Lord, I want to talk to the attorney. And I said, how much money do I take? He said, $1. $1? What are you going to do with $1? And long story short was, I'm sitting with this attorney. I said, like, how much do you want? He said, well, I'll rent you the property, 100 acres for $1 a month per acre. So it's $100 a month. I'm like, yeah, I can afford that. And usually we also offer people an upfront amount of money for royalties and then so much per ton of waste coal. That's just how it works in this industry. So how much front royalty do you want? He goes, nothing. How much do you want per ton? Nothing. Just clean up the pile. I'm like, dude, sign up. So in order to do all of this, it required us to bring together a bunch of technologies. And I had actually closed down a couple of the companies I had. And when I start a new company, I just sit with the Lord for about a week. I just go somewhere and hide out. And, all right, God, what's the name of the company? And he literally spoke FirePoint Energy. And I was like, yeah, but that kind of sounds like a Kim Clement thing. But the science behind what we're doing, molecular dissociation, we use fire from a plasma stream to rip molecules apart, and then those molecules recombine into a new molecule called synthesis gas. And that's carbon monoxide, carbon dioxide, and hydrogen, which we can turn that into jet fuel, gasoline, diesel fuel, methanol, and ethanol. We can make 5 different fuels from this gas. And then we can also run turbines and make electricity. So each of our sites also is energy independent. We don't need electricity from the grid, and we don't need fuel. We make our own fuel and we make our own electricity. And we still have an abundance to send to markets. The other caveat is when we're doing this process, we're pulling out those rare earth elements. And your smartwatch, electric cars, Department of Defense, and a host of other minerals that this is a baby pile, we call it, at 4 million tons. And in that 4 million tons is $1 billion worth of jet fuel and minerals. I'm going to go talk to some guys about on Friday. I leave tonight. They have 4.296 billion in minerals and something like 10 billion overall between fuels and stuff. So again, this is a waste stream just sitting out in the woods here, and nobody knows what to do with it. So that's what FirePoint's here to do, is convert that into useful forms of energy, which we started out by looking at landfills to take the garbage out of landfills and convert the plastic, the diapers, the tires, the trees, the wood, whatever, no metals, into set gas and to produce electricity out of it. And there is a unit being built by a company I formed back some time ago to do that in Virginia. So the science is not new. 1920s and 1940s, Germany converted coal into all of their fuel. We just never went that route. We went petroleum in the United States.
This is fascinating, Bill. I'm going to stop you right here. And then Jordan, I want you to ask some questions too. But first, let me pull up this word from the late prophet Kim Clement. Everybody can go to houseofdestiny.org and pull up some of his words. This was one of them, though, that ties exactly in with what you were just saying. And so I just want to read this one. And then, Bill, I want your take on it. And then, Jordan, I'll open the floor for you for questions as well. So this was from September 3rd, 2005 in California. And I'll just read what the late prophet Kim Clement said. What took place in New Orleans caused America to go into even a greater crisis. It's not the oil, it's the refining of the oil that's the problem. And therefore, we don't have time, and that's what it is. God said, remember when I told you about the big E? For those that don't know it, God said there's a big E that's being brought forth, not petroleum. This is going to be a new source. God said they're going to have to press in to get that energy or that source to this nation. In other words, they cannot rely on the source or the natural resources. They cannot rely upon oil. There is something else. The government of the USA is about to release that, and release it, it shall. It's going to be a fantastic thing. All I know is I heard it in the secret place. This is going to force the United States of America where they are at the point where they will not rely on the Middle East anymore. There will be a source that they will have within this nation. It shall come from the garbage. It will come from the ground. It will come from paper. It will come from bugs eating a bunch of stuff. I'm seeing a bunch of bugs eating a bunch of stuff. God said this is going to be the craziest thing. They are going to say, wow, this is being wasted. The creatures are eating what could be used to cause our engines to work and our vehicles to move. I'm seeing this bunch of bugs eating this stuff, and there it is. That's it right there. When this happens, the United States shall rise above the wealth of the Middle East in terms of oil, and it shall take over, and they shall say, now take your oil and shove it. This is the time for America to press in. And so, Bill, What are your thoughts about that?
So if you take garbage and you heap it up into a pile and call it a landfill, bacterium start to grow in there, and they do eat your banana peels, potato peelings, apples, oranges, all that stuff. They don't eat wood atypically. They don't eat plastics, but they feed on these wood resources that we're throwing in the garbage. And their exhaust is called methane, CH4. And right now at most landfills, they're developing pipes that collect the methane. They run generators and make electricity. But methane is in another form is called natural gas, same molecule, CH4. So these bugs can produce this methane, and that can be converted into gasoline, diesel fuel, jet fuel through what's called a Fischer-Tropsch process. But again, there's still a lot of garbage in the landfill that can't be converted by the bugs. So we started looking at this back in the 1990s, and we knew that a German process, again, Fischer-Tropsch and gasification, would convert coal into fuels. And at the end of the day, a molecule is a molecule. Carbon's carbon, oxygen, oxygen, hydrogen's hydrogen. And if you can take those molecules apart, you can make new things out of it. That's how we make plastics. That's how we make synthetic motor oils, all through basically gas conversion processes. So we started looking at, well, can we take a landfill? An oil company has to go out and spend billions of dollars to dig down in holes and try and find an oil pocket, right? We go out and we drive down the road and we see a sign that says landfill. To us, that's an oil field. And I can allude to that there is a process getting ready to start this year in Virginia to convert garbage and landfills. But again, it's not just the digestibles. It's the plastic, the papers, wood, tires, all of that can be converted into synthesis gas, which then can be converted into 5 fuels: methanol, ethanol, gasoline, jet fuel, diesel fuel. And that's done by changing catalyst. So if tomorrow morning we went back to ethanol again as an oxygenator for gasolines, you stop our process, you pull out the catalyst, put in another catalyst, and now you're making ethanol. If you wanted jet fuel, you can turn ethanol into jet fuel. And that's what a lot of people don't understand is these molecules can be reformed into different components. That's where plastics and stuff come from. So in my view, back in the 90s and early 2000s, landfills were the new energy source. And we looked for the technology. I sent people all around the world trying to find a gasifier that we could ship to a place and do that. And we couldn't find it. And that's another whole story. But in a nutshell, why throw something away that can make something else that's useful? And we built a machine. I acquired it in 2020 through a stock swap with a company out of California. You can go on YouTube and look up Adaptive, ADAPTIVE ARC, all one word. And you can see a gas fryer that would fold up, go on a truck, set it up at a landfill, set up at a hurricane site. Garbage can be ground up, trees can be ground up and converted into gas to make electricity and get a city back on the grid, or it can be converted into fuels. So we've been looking at all these modular systems to literally start deploying around the world to do the conversion of waste streams into better forms of energy. So yeah, totally doable.
Bill, why? Okay, so I want to go back to what you said about this was being used by Germany, but then we use petroleum. Why do you think that is part of the whole cabal system that to keep this hidden just for money purposes? What is that the main? I'm just trying to figure out why it was known. Do you think that it didn't happen earlier?
So here's the real deal. If you take all the theories out, in 1920s Germany, 2 guys, Fischer and Tropsch, came up with a system to convert lignite coal, which is the lowest grade of coal you can get, and they turned it into, get it, syngas. And they converted the syngas in through a gas to liquids plant into all of the gasoline, jet fuel, and diesel fuel Germany needed to not only exist, but to fight the war. That process worked from the 1920s to 1940s. At the end of the war, the U.S. Army brought that technology to the United States, to University of Pittsburgh and to Texas A&M. They reverse engineered the science and technology and said, okay, we can make synthetic fuels. And the oil industry at that time was growing in dominance. They said, well, as long as crude oil is $15 a barrel or less, we'll stick with crude. So literally we stuck with crude oil because it was just cheaper at the time. We were not forward looking into the ramifications of car emissions, jet emissions, and all this other stuff. It was just business. And there have been companies that have worked on these in the background over the years. There's a company in Africa called Sasol. They convert coal into fuels, still do it today, and in mass quantity, commercial, industrial scale quantities. There was a group here in Pennsylvania. I met with the family that was going to convert their waste coal years ago into jet fuel. They had raised something like $700 million. The DOE was going to fund a big portion of that. And they were going to use the technology from Sasol in Africa, and I believe a BP gasifier, British Petroleum. And just about the time it came together, the DOE backed out and the project fell apart. The living brother that was involved in all that still mad to this day because they spent millions and millions of dollars to have it go poof in the middle of the night. If we bring God in the picture, God's saying, not yet. So
why did the DOE back out?
They do that. They're known for that.
Okay.
Remember this, back 20 years ago, nobody cared about synthetic fuels still. Waste coal was a huge problem in Pennsylvania, just for numbers. There are 9,700 of these waste coal piles scattered across this state alone. Some of them have been cleaned up in one of two ways. One way is they went over and covered up with dirt. To me, that's like taking dog poo in the middle of your living room, throwing a rug over it, going, it still smells funny, but it's not there. I don't see it. The other route was they would dig this stuff up and try and burn it in a coal power plant, or they went and buried it somewhere else. Again, you're just shifting the problem to another area. So in a nutshell, all of these sites contain, and this is the reason I came to PA, rare earth elements, but we could also make the jet fuel, and the jet fuel makes the rare earth elements a freebie to us. So if we have these sites, I don't think people have been thinking along this technological vein for decades. It's really kind of just a sparse science. And, I've worked on a project where we could put this little device in the trunk of your car and we could drive your car around on water. But you have to be somewhat of a mad scientist to do it. And typically most people aren't there. So we still have refinements to do that and automations to put into it. But eventually, I believe we will be a hydrogen society globally. Hydrogen will be the fuel of the future. And it's not the Hindenburg. Hindenburg did not blow up because of hydrogen. It burned up because of the skin that was on the Hindenburg, which was rocket fuel. That's what caught on fire and burned it up. Hydrogen is a very safe fuel, just like propane in your gas grill or methane out of a landfill. It's just a gas. We burn hydrogen in our cars every day. That's what burns and makes your car drive up and down the road.
Now, Bill, this technology that you're literally converting garbage and different things into this basically new technology. I don't think anybody else is doing this. And I remember on an interview, you told me that God really gave you the secret to what you're doing and how this works. And so can you just backpedal a little bit and tell us a little bit about how God revealed to you what you need to be doing and have brought to fruition in Pennsylvania?
I'm a high school educated landscaper. That was my background. I have no background in science. I did not like science classes in school. I've taken 2 companies public, helped other companies go public. So my background really was driving the business, and business doesn't care what business does. But when we were doing research into synthetic gases, looking at all the Germany stuff, I actually followed the trail of the technology leaving Germany, coming to the United States, what happened to it. And I knew we could do this. So again, a missing component is called a gasifier. In particular, it's a plasma gasifier. And we just couldn't find one. So we were working on the catalyst side to convert syngas into fuels. And I had this crazy fuel guy out of Warren, Pennsylvania. And he would come up with stuff that I thought he worked for like a big oil company. Turns out he was a pilot for an airline. And when I asked him some questions, he went and researched chemistry to come up with this stuff. And we were making high explosives for fuels. We were doing all kinds of crazy things. But I knew years ago that waste to energy was going to be the future. And I kind of parked it for a while, and then Hurricane Katrina happened. And when Katrina happened, it's like all this came back. It's like, well, we can grind up these houses. We can grind up these trees. We can make a gas, and we can make electricity, and we can get them back on the grid, and we can help all these people. That's always been a motivating factor. So I literally had a public company at the time, sent people around the country and around the world looking at these gasifiers, and now this one's not working. Oh, they had a problem here. And that was always the story. So I retired in 2010. Gave away all my money, went to Israel, came back, got remarried, and my wife and I were taking care of my mom. She passed away, and God said, move to California to transfer the wealth. I'm like, woohoo, I'm in. If I'd have known what we'd gone through, I went, oh, hell no.
Right.
So we moved to California. I set up a company in San Jose. I gave out 2 business cards at a prayer meeting one night. A couple weeks later, this guy calls me up and goes, why'd I have your card? I'm like, I don't know. Why do you have your card? I was like, I don't know. Who the hell are you? I mean, it's just where I was at. He said, my name is Christian Juvan. Google me. Well, Christian's the grandfather of plasma physics. And he had built a gasifier that would fold up, go on a truck, and it would turn 25 tons of garbage a day into enough gas to run a 500 kilowatt generator. So we could power homes from their garbage, right? Mm. And that I knew was the future of this. So now we have the gasifier. I won't go into all the things we took to acquire that thing, like living in a house full of rats and all that fun stuff, because we didn't have any money. Mm-hmm. And even in all this, I would, if I had the money I had before I retired and gave it all to God, I'd have never gone on this journey. Didn't need to.
That's right.
But the way he arranged it, I wound up finding this company. I went down and looked at their equipment, and I was working, trying to acquire it, and it just wouldn't work out. And then in 2020, we reapproached them again, and I was living in Florida and told some of the guys, like, we'll give you stock in this company if you give us stock in your company. And within a week, we own their company. And then it's like, okay, now what do we do? And that journey from 2020 in California, it was in Thanasis, Florida, caused me to drive 6,000 miles in 1 month to get all the stuff together. And then we spent 3 years in Texas doing engineering work to build this machine that will be set up in Virginia. And I built it up through another company I set up, and other people run that company. So we're in the process of a lot of companies doing a lot of different things. So in a nutshell, waste energy is the future, because we don't have to build a refinery in the sense of like a Tenneco, Texaco, BP type refinery. We can build little modular plants at a site and turn garbage into electricity, or we can sit here and turn waste coal into electricity or into fuels and extract those rare earth elements at the same time. So the science is caught up with, I believe, the timing of life. They've known about rare earths in Pennsylvania, for example, for 70 years. But who cared? We didn't have smartwatches. We didn't have electric cars back then. So today, the demand is what's driving literally Trump has signed several executive orders saying, we want clean minerals in the United States. We want clean coal in the United States. We want this. And I'm like, that's us. That's us. That's us.
And Bill, do you know of other people who are doing this? Like, have you heard? Are there other, companies?
Not to what we're doing. They are making fuel in Africa. You can look up a company called Sasol. I think it's SASSOL. They make fuel from coal. There have been hit and miss companies here and there, but they don't have the subsidies and tax benefits that the petroleum industry does. Mm-hmm. And that's another thing that we're getting ready to work on. In fact, I have a guy that's coming here and bringing in as a lobbyist to help change some of the laws in Pennsylvania to make coal more friendly. Because in our sense, when we clean up a waste coal pile, we get rid of something called acid mine drainage. And every waste coal pile in PA produces this orangish looking water that goes down into the rivers and stuff. So we're cleaning up a hazardous material at the same time we're getting rid of a waste pile. At the same time, we're making new energy and new power and fuel for our country. So it's just the timing, I believe.
It always is.
At the end of the day, that's what it comes down to. 20 years ago, I wouldn't be here.
Right.
Because nobody cared.
Exactly.
No, that's so true. And so for everybody watching who's like, okay, I love everything you're saying. I know that, this is new, and they're thinking, okay, where can I go to invest? How do I be a part of this? What would you tell them, Bill?
So right now we've raised like $2 million. When we started doing these podcasts, lady called me and goes, "You're going to be on Rumble on Alpha Vets." And I'm like, "What's Rumble?" Who are the Alpha Vets? Is it like kid show or something? I don't know. And then that just kind of led to different shows. In fact, that's where we hooked up at, as Jenness is through His Glory.
Actually, we're hooked up with the Alpha Vets too. So shout out to Israel and Chris. We're actually, they've helped us start up this as well. So shout out to them. They are the best. That's Alpha Vets, everybody on Rumble. And so,
good guys.
Very good.
So we raised like $2 million through a project called WeFunder. And then it's like God just shut that door, and we tried opening again. It just wasn't open. It's like, okay, so we're doing a traditional investment raise through what's called Reg D 506 offerings to accredited and non-accredited investors. But we have like minimum investments like $10,000 because we're in the process of taking this company public. And we're doing that through what's called a reverse merger or reverse IPO, where we buy a used company on the stock market that's just sitting there, which, I started that company too. And then we take this company and we merge these two together. And then this company shareholders come into this company. And then this becomes a surviving company, which in this case is FirePoint Energy. And we'll be on the OTC stock market sometime around November. The attorney's already working on all this. There's re-domiciling corporations, merger documents, and all that stuff starting to happen. And then we have to go through FINRA, and that takes a while. But we recently also had a group come to us out of France, and that has something different meaning to my life. That's like, hey, we'd like to do a PIPE round. PIPE stands for private investment in a public entity. And a company like that comes in and invests just before you go public. And they said, if you'll go to NASDAQ. And so we are looking at potentially moving to NASDAQ, but we will be on the OTC markets. It'll be a new ticker symbol in which everybody signs up on our website at firepoint.energy. We keep everybody posted every month. We're sending out updates. This place has gone from a jungle to a paradise. And at the end of the day, we're getting ready to launch this off, but also multiple sites across the state at the same time. Back in 2021, I was looking with XL Plus back then to raise a fund and to start funding projects back then, which would have been just landfills. But now we're looking at setting up a fund and raising about $3 billion from pension programs, from insurance companies, private equity groups and stuff like that, so that we can start building these sites across the state. And right now, most of these are concentrated around the Pittsburgh region of Pennsylvania. And that's what's going to drive the stock is we want to have like 10 to 15 of these plants operating. Plus, we'll build other sites for other companies, but we're also looking into West Virginia, Kentucky, Tennessee, all the way down into Texas, following the coal seams. I might not be alive that long because you're talking years to put these projects together. But at the end of the day, this would produce enough fuel that we could tell Saudi Arabia, take your oil and shove it. And energy independence is what we've been seeking for a long time. Unfortunately, the oil industry likes to keep us dependent. But until you have something different, how do you do that? And that's the practicality is a soccer mom's going to be able to hop in her car and take her kids somewhere, not sitting there adjusting like peroxides in a fuel mixture and doing different things like that to get there, or, so we have to have something that plugs in that the average consumer never sees a difference. And that's what the energy and the fuels we'll produce will do.
This is incredible.
It really is. No, it really is. Bill, you said November that has to do with the ticker.
Yeah, has to do with the stock.
Okay. But what are you thinking, just roughly? I know we never know God's timing, but just in your head, for when this all you think will be brought to completion, basically, or able to be used.
So the issue we're running to in Pennsylvania is called the Department of Environmental Protection, DEP.
Uh-huh.
We say that DEP stands for Don't Expect Permits. Because we started one permit application back in like March, and we just got a preliminary permit to start bringing in wastewater, which that is another aspect we're doing here. Is we will bring in, truckers will bring to us the water that comes out of these natural gas wells in Pennsylvania. And the reason is they said that 40% of this nation's lithium is in that water. So our advantage is, since we make our own electricity, we don't pay for electricity, which is why the other projects go out of business. It's just not a business. And out of that, we'll get manganese, magnesium, and salt. So we'll pull all the good out. We get paid to take in this water. We get paid to clean it up. And then they take the water back and use it for fracking. It's clean water, not oily water. So that's another aspect. That revenue project should be starting by November as well. So we should start producing money here. Right now, we're just spending money.
Right.
Of course, I've got a CFO in California, like, what are you buying now? Because this is not an industry they're familiar with.
Yeah.
So I have to explain why I bought a machine that does this, or I bought a machine that does that. But in a nutshell, the first phase of our business here will cost us $5 million. We've already raised 2 of that. We're still raising the last 3. When we start making the fuels, that will cost $170 million. This is a baby pile. And if we could get our permits on time, we could be making fuel by the end of next year. If not, it'll be sometime in that following next year. But permitting is really what's holding us up, because these guys are nuts. This department doesn't know what this department's doing, and this department doesn't care what these guys are doing. And that's what we run into. And in fact, 2 guys are coming here next Wednesday who work out of an office I physically went to and explained everything to, saying, you're going to build this plant out here? We don't know anything about it. I was like, I was in your office. So this is the kind of stuff we're running into that's delaying things, but delays may not be a bad thing, because I found a long time ago, if we're getting a delay here, keep doing this stuff.
Yeah.
And when that stuff, all of a sudden that moves out of the way, and now you can do this stuff. And
I do believe the delays, just like open doors lead us into God's timing, it's the same with closed doors and delays. It is truly, everyone always assumes it's the enemy attacking. No, a lot of times it's actually God keeping you in alignment with his timing, I think. And even if it is the enemy, God allows it to keep us. There's something that has to go on behind the scenes in one way or another for the timing to be right. So it's all timing. I
wrote a book, it's stuck on Amazon. It's called Parables Unbound, because it was literally visions I was having time after time after time. And I just wrote these visions down and it became a book. But probably about a year ago, God started talking about another book, and it's called Purpose. And it's about how God, Alpha God, the beginning, and the Omega God, the end, work together. And we're walking with Yahweh, the I Am. So we're watching God unfold things. And, it says, I shut doors no man can open, and I open doors no man can shut. Well, I kept banging on the doors, kicking on the doors. I'd get a chainsaw out, I'd get a blowtorch out, and them doors wouldn't open.
They just won't budge because they're not. Yeah.
So now when I see that happen, I walk over. There's usually a bench in the hallway. I just sit on the bench. When you open the door, God, I'll go forward. Till you do, I won't. And what are we doing while we're waiting? And
that's it.
We've spent, let's see, I got this property November 1st of last year. So we haven't even been here a year. And we've put almost $2 million in this property. We built the building for the reverse osmosis, and we've just been cleaning this jungle up. So now it's like that part's ready. And I know the next phase will be bringing in the equipment and starting building the plants. And I was at a meeting last night about they're contesting a big power plant that's going in and the emissions. So it was kind of like, this is what you'll be facing going forward in these other projects. Like, okay, so we'll just prepare for that. What does it say? Wisdom says, come here. Hey, dummy, come here. Listen to me. Make me your sister. Listen to me. If not, I will laugh at you in the day of calamity.
Right.
I don't like that laughing part.
Yeah. No.
This is
I'll listen.
I love how you interpret scripture. And sometimes I feel like Jesus talks to me like this too. And then I was reading just today, actually, in Matthew, where he's like, how much longer do I have to deal with you people, when he's talking to the disciples? And I could totally hear that sometimes, because he's got such a sense of humor of like, all right, people, we've been through this. Yeah. Just let me take it. Let me have control. Yeah.
My current in-laws weren't my in-laws at the time, and I was going to a little church that I think most of the parishioners were rabbit squirrels, and there were some people that were off-ended. And my current in-laws said, hey, there's like witches in the area. Let's go there and pray over the church. I'm like, okay, whatever. So we're all in this little church. And it's one of them little old country churches with the old wooden pews type thing. And we're just all in there praying and stuff. And all of a sudden I see these two big feet, and they have golf shoes on. And I was like, as I looked up there are these old-timey golf pants and socks, and then an Argyle sweater. And I look up, and there's Jesus, and he's huge, and he's got the beanie hat on with a little pom-pom on top. And I was like, you're going to make me tell somebody this, aren't you? And he literally reaches down through the floor, pulls the demon up, pulls out a golf club, and goes, "What?" I was like, oh, God. And just about that time, my mother-in-law goes, Bill, what's the Lord showing you? I was like, oh, geez. So I'm telling her, she goes, he really shows you some weird things. Because when I came at this, I couldn't memorize scripture. I finally memorized one because I read a guy's t-shirt in church one day over and over and over until I memorized it. But I looked at the Bible in the form of relationships, how David and God worked together, how Abraham and God worked together, how Moses and God worked together. And they were all messed up people in a way. So I decided a long time ago, okay, this is going to be about relationship. I'm not going to be here in religion. I'm not going to memorize scriptures, because I watch people throwing scriptures at things that God's like, no, this is the answer over here. Oh, but it says it. And I'm saying that because that's what my wife does all the time. Well, it's written this. Yes, but it's also written over here. You got to read the whole book.
That's it.
Yeah, that is so true.
And see, what are you doing, God?
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I love that. And there is, because there's a difference, guys, between relationship with Jesus and just reading the word and throwing out scripture. Also, the Pharisees could do that, and he called them a brood of vipers. It's
sacks of dead men's bones.
The relationship. Yeah.
Yeah.
And we kind of touched on this earlier before we got on, but I like an analogy that seems to fit. And my youngest stepson is a Navy SEAL. When you join the Navy, every SEAL has to join the Navy, and you're just in the cooking pot. And then you're separated out into what's called pre-qualification, and then you're separated out into something called buds. And this is where people hear about Hell Week and all this stuff. But the interesting part is at the beginning of buds, they say, look at the guy in front of you, the guy behind you, the guy to your right, and the guy to your left, and they're going to be gone. Of course, this guy's looking at you, and these guys are looking at you going, oh, he's going to be gone. And the process they put SEALs through, the dropout rate is like 80% because of the pressure. And I believe that's the same thing too in the kingdom. Yes. Is the pressure comes in and most people just fall away.
Yeah.
And I said, my wife's name is Heather, and she's like, every time I come to pressure, I would just shrink back. I said, well, just don't do that anymore. It's kind of the easy peasy. Just don't do that. She used to say things like, well, I never see Jesus. I never see angels. I said, number two, start saying, I see angels. I see Jesus. Just make that confession in your mouth. Why? It's kind of out of the Bible. Mm-hmm. So now she can see angels and she can see Jesus, which goes back to what you were talking, Jenness was saying about you, is you want to help people in power to use the tools that God gave us. Mm-hmm. And even though Cash is a Navy SEAL, he still has to carry a gun. Yes. When he goes to the battlefield, I mean, hey, dude, I left my gun at home. Can I borrow somebody's gun for a while? And you got any bullets?
Right.
Oh, Do you need armor?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That's right.
So I use that as how God wants us to be, because he talks about armor, swords, shields.
Yes.
Why? There's an enemy.
Yeah, exactly.
So funny, Bill. So I can't help but see the irony in this. So behind Jordan is her book Drafted, as we're talking about Navy SEALs, which is all about knowing the commander of heaven's armies personally on a personal level. And then I just came out with a book that's called Little Warriors Lullaby, which is teaching little kids about the full armor of God from Ephesians 6. And so this is so funny. Everybody here is getting, like, God is giving them a blueprint and an image of like being a warrior for Christ and the importance of knowing what that is and what it is you're supposed to do.
Yes.
But you can't get your marching orders if you don't have a personal relationship with God.
That is where it has to start. And I tell everyone, just like your wife, Bill, what you're saying, all the time, I have people asking, how do you hear his voice? And it's the focus is wrong. It's like they're so focused on seeing something that you're missing where it has to begin. And it is, Jen, it's as simple that a child can understand it, which is why Jesus told us this, that the key to the kingdom, the key to the accessing the kingdom is childlike faith. And that is really going back to the beginning. Yes, that's exactly right.
100% that's you, Bill. Yes.
It is. But it goes back to just what Jenness is saying, having the personal relationship with Jesus, looking at him as your friend and spending time being with him, whether it's in the word, or we always do like to say, go into your secret place and imagine, unlock your imagination like a child, picture meeting with Jesus, and the Holy Spirit intercedes and you can start conversing with him. And so this is really what that's everything.
You have to.
You have to. And Jesus even says himself, to see the kingdom, you have to have the faith of a child. It is not maybe try having the faith of a child. It is you have to.
The kingdom belongs to these little ones. There's a reason. Yes.
That's it. So it is the personal relationship. It's as simple as that. But do you really believe it? Do you really believe you can have, and that God wants to have that with you? That's what stops, I think, 95% of people from stepping into that arena.
Here's a little fruit story. Is I was starting this journey. I had a mentor that came into my office and talked about, you're taking the Lord's name in vain 7 times. And I was like, so who's counting? His belt buckle filled the room. And I'm looking at Jesus Christ and a big cross. And I'm like, it is a lightning bolt coming through that window about 2 seconds. Got my name on. I'm going to hell. And God used him to bring me in. He gave me a Bible. And I just started reading his Bible. I just started eating it. And we were talking one day, and I was talking about business and stuff. And he said, well, Bill, God works gradually. It's all over time. There's no get rich quick scheme, yada, yada. So why not? Why are they starving one day and there's more than enough the next day? One day they go out and there's like gold. They're having to haul it off for days and days. Well, God doesn't work like that. Money doesn't fall out of the sky. I was like, why not? I'm back in my office, and here were my prayers. God, I need money. That's it. A guy calls me up like 20 minutes later and says, can we land in your parking lot? And I'm like, yeah.
Land like an airplane? Land?
A helicopter comes in and lands in my parking lot. And people are like, dude, there's a helicopter in a parking lot. It's like, nah, y'all are crazy. I knew it was there. So I go out, this guy comes in, he gives me like 20 grand. And I call Randy up and said, Randy, I got a problem. He said, what? I said, money just fell out of the sky. My ex number 2 used to get migraines all the time, especially when we were stressed, which if you're in business, you're always stressed. And she gets this migraine. We lived across the street. She goes home because of a migraine. And I said, God, I need money. 20 minutes later, guy calls me and goes, can I come see you? I'm like, sure. Comes over, talks, gives me 20 grand. I didn't care about the money. The coolest part was, when you go to like get a prescription, it's in that like pouch. So he had $20,000 stuffed in a prescription pouch. So after he leaves, I go back and said, hey, how's your migraine doing? Oh, it's a little better. I said, here's some medicine. That's what I watch about God. It's just, people are like, how do you do that? I said, simple. God's nuts. I'm just part of the nut program,
Yes.
I used to pop into heaven every night for weeks. And one night God was sitting there with his hands like this, and I popped up and I stuck my head under his arms and I looked up his nose. I said, "What you looking at?" He said, "I'm looking to make sure that everything I spoke over your life comes to pass." I was like, "So cool, you got this, huh? I'm going to take a nap." That's what he wants us to do, is trust so much. But the world has taught us not to trust.
Yes.
Yeah.
And we have to unlearn what the world has taught us to learn what the kingdom does.
Yes.
Yeah.
In fact, even here in Pennsylvania, this came to me one morning. I was sitting up. I always sit up during the morning, like 2, 3 o'clock in the morning for a few hours. And I was sitting there, and what kept going over and over in my mind was, "Our Father who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Let your kingdom come, let your will be done." He said, "You're doing that part." What part? He said, "When you change a place like this, you're bringing heaven to earth.
Yes.
There are no landfills in heaven. There's not a waste coal pile there. There's no junkyards. So part of our job is to bring heaven to earth. And when we do that, we transform earth.
Yes.
And that's part of our job. And so, like, when people come here, they're like, "Wow, how long you been working here?" Like, a few months. And they think, like, "How big a crew you got working here?" Is like, 1, 3.
Wow.
And that's if I work. But it's all God. And even Heather, the day she was leaving, she goes, "Wow, look at this place. It's so nice now." And God said, "Yep, sure is." Because if nothing else happens, if I walked away from this property, I know we brought heaven to earth. And I think that's another thing we should start looking at, is how do I bring heaven to earth? So when I go to a place, first thing that starts happening, I start fixing it up.
Yeah.
Out of my own pocket most of the time. Why? Because it needs to be cleaned up. It needs to be fixed up. So that's kind of what I'm doing here, is cleaning up and fixing up.
Well, I have to throw this out because this is incredible. Jordan and I, everybody, just went to a conference called Believe Big in Townsend, Maryland. And on the way to Jordan's house with another one of our sisters in Christ and an incredible prayer warrior, her name is Becca McRory. So we're driving to Jordan's house, and I keep seeing God speaking to me through road signs and signs along the way. And so one of the things, Bill, we just shared with you before coming on today was that I kept seeing freedom on a trash can. Like, I guess it was the name of the company, but it was like all these trash cans, and in this huge letters, it said freedom. And so I was like, freedom, like God speaking directly to me. And it's so funny because part of what you guys are doing is taking something everybody despises, trash, waste, and turning it into something good.
What was Kim's word? We'll tell Saudi Arabia to take their oil. What are you going to replace it with? You have to have a something. And this is that something.
Yeah. So, and then Jordan put together that word. It was for us in some ways, but it was also for this interview coming up, which I hadn't even put together yet. But another word he gave me, Bill, was Bethel, which literally means house of God. And that's where everybody in the Bible, there's a couple different references all the way back to even Abraham. But the one that was coming to mind to me specifically on this one particular road sign that said Bethel, it means house of God, is when Jacob had lost everything. He had ran away. His brother wanted to kill him. He had stolen the birthright. He's in the middle of the desert, no wife, no food. Where's my next meal? I'm in the desert. He lays down and he has this dream of an open portal to heaven with these angels going up and down. It's traditionally known as Jacob's ladder, this dream. And so after that, it really inspired him. He names it Bethel, what he laid his head on, the rock. He says, this is a marker now, and I'm going to name this Bethel, house of God. And God said, I'm going to give you all of this. So back to your whole point of just relinquishing that control, regardless of what it looks like. The key is the relationship and the obedience. He's going to take care of the rest of it. And so he's really weighed on my heart this weekend to start declaring Bethel, like house of God is where we are, where we make it, which is ties right in with what you're doing. No matter what happens to that place, you're literally bringing heaven to earth by what you're doing. And we all can too. And in fact, that's part of what God wants us to do.
Yes. Yes.
I mean, I'd hate to get to heaven and find out that I live next to a landfill. Like, dude, what the heck? You know?
Bill, I always say that. I say my biggest fear, and this has been from forever, is not getting to heaven. And, you know, it's really getting to heaven and God showing you what your life could have been if you trusted him and obeyed him. It's not seeing the things you missed or, did wrong. It's seeing what your life could have been if you trusted him So it's that you see in the landfill right next to where you live, that kind of thing. But your eyes weren't open. That's, I think, the worst.
That is huge. Yeah, that is so huge. And Bill, we have 10 minutes. All right. So first of all, everybody, we've already discussed this ahead of today's segment. We're going to do a series with Bill, a mini series, because he also has an incredible testimony of how he got to be where he is today, and, you know, how God just really led him to this moment in time. And of course, his history is a little different than maybe you would expect for somebody who's so close to God now. And this testimony needs to get out. And so we are going to dive into that. We are doing a mini series, but just to end today, we've got literally 10 minutes. One of the things that came to fruition today when we were talking, guys, was our connection to what Jordan and I call secret places. Everybody, we just did a segment on the secret places and shared kind of the vision that Jordan and I have been given by the Lord about these places where people can come and really get to know God, to find healing, to train up in the ways they should go, to undo trauma, things like this, and to really get ready to be drafted into the army of God. And then, Bill, you said the end thing, or the end goal of all of this with this company is, yes, the energy and you know, taking garbage and turning it into something amazing, but also ultimately you said it was for enrichment centers. And so I want you to pick up there, because God totally orchestrated today's meeting.
Yeah.
So back in the early 90s or mid 90s, when I was starting this journey, I was walking across a field with my mentor, and I literally looked across the street and there was a building there. And I said, Randy, there's a school over there. He goes, nah, whatever. I said, oh, it's not for you. And I kept praying into it, because when I first came into all of this, he really had me involved in intercessory prayer, and even over 9/11 and the plane that went into the Pentagon. But long story short, I started praying this. What is this, God? What's this about? And one day he spoke, he said, enrichment centers. And then we were watching Daystar one morning, and there was a panel on, and the lady on the panel said, oh yeah, God wants to raise up these places called enrichment centers. He told you to? And we were looking to buy a house, and the lady that owned the house had a realtor, and I was talking to him. He said, yeah, we've got this place over in Surrey, Virginia. It used to be a Baptist retreat, and the Baptists are selling off all their retreats. I'm like, yeah, okay, whatever. And the Lord said, go over there. I'll speak to you when you put boots on the ground. So I was like, okay. I went and put my cowboy boots on, and I drove over there. And when I stepped on the property, he said, this would be a healing place for wounded warriors, which in one context, you could say military people have been wounded. But what I really believed was it was going to be a healing center for Christians that have been out on the battlefield. They've been beat to hell. They could come in and rest up, heal up, and be trained in the technologies and giftings that they need to go do the next thing. And strangely enough, on that property is the second largest eagle's nest in the state of Virginia.
Wow.
And I see eagles everywhere I go, and it relates to the prophetic. So I started saying, well, God, I started seeing more of these places as we went across the country. I started talking to other people before you guys, who said, yeah, we're going to build this place near a lake, and we're going to build a church there, a training center. You come in, you get trained up, and we kick you out. Go do it. I was like, that's an enrichment center. And then Keith Green's property in Texas, some friends of ours were talking to us about that. And I believe that'll be an enrichment center. So I know of several of these across the country that will pop up. But as Lance Wildnow said at the Kingdom Economic Summit back in 2008, it will take billions and billions of dollars to bring in this harvest. And it'll be setting up these centers and getting people properly trained so they can go out and execute the kingdom versus church.
Yes.
And that's Miles Monroe was at the conference we did that year. And that's what he was talking all about, the kingdom. And Lance was talking about the 7 Mountain Prophecy, and Rick Joyner was talking about things. So that was 2008, now starting to see these things come to fruition.
Yeah.
So our technology will transfer the wealth. I'll pour that wealth into enrichment centers, into the kingdom.
Yes.
That's what it's for. I can't take it with me.
This is totally amazing. And I've interviewed Bill, and this was the timing this needed to come out. Literally, the last segment, I think, Jordan, you and I did together was the secret places. And Bill, I've interviewed you so many times, and this has never come up. And so, again, it was a timing thing. But again, back to the whole Bethel, renaming it Bethel, like these places are houses of God.
Right.
Well, and back also to timing, you're just making me think, Bill, have you had any kind of spiritual connection with bells, like ringing bells? Have you gotten anything on that download?
We're in Pennsylvania. I heard one day,
Yeah.
go to Gettysburg, and I'm not into, stuff. And I go to Gettysburg and I'm just driving all over the place looking for stuff. And I drive to this spire, concrete spire, where one of the battles happened. And there's a huge angel standing behind it with his head bowed down. And it was a female angel and her arms bowed down. And I was like, wow, you're a big sucker. And the Lord said, release her. I said, I release you now in Yeshua's name. Mm-hmm. The angel pops up. She had combat boots on, spins around and runs towards Pittsburgh. Because I just knew that's where she was going. Yeah. And then, I don't know, about a week or so later, I heard, go to Pittsburgh and go tell that angel to ring the Liberty Bell.
I just got chills.
So we go to Pittsburgh and I'm in there. I said, ring the bell, ring the bell. And I knew that was a freedom ring over this nation.
Yes.
And that angel still stands right behind the Liberty Bell. Mm-hmm. So there's so much connection in all this stuff that we're thinking it's just me or incidental. But, God's weaving a tapestry that we can't even fathom here on earth because it's so complex. Because remember this, if he's the Omega God, and in Revelation, he said he wipes out the earth, creates a new heaven, new earth. That means there's a version 2.0 out there, which means he'd be at the end of that. So that's how far ahead of us he is. So we're his servants to do what he wants done.
Yes.
Yes.
And either we're, as Jesus said, I set before you this day, what? Life and death. By the way, choose life. It's a better thing.
Yeah. That's so true, Bill. That is a really, I love that story about the bell. Do you know when that was, when you were in Gettysburg?
I have to go look at my journals. It was a few months ago.
Okay.
Yeah, I'll find it and dig it up and shoot me an email to remind me.
Okay. I really want to know when that was, because Jenness and I have gotten a lot on the bells, and particularly them just marking the time where God is basically saying the blessings are going to manifest, that this is the time, basically marking timing. And this has been over a year. So I will email you because that's fascinating. And I want to know, I like to connect time, specific dates and times. So cool.
I have, in the 1990s, I wrote journals, and it was literally about 4-foot stack of journals of end time events.
Yes.
Movie productions that will come out, plays. It showed me that we'd set up a center one day. It looks like Solomon's Temple. And when you walked into it, it would be like walking to Solomon's Temple to watch a play. And the first play is based off of the song that the Vineyard used to do, Will You Ride With Me? And at the end of that play, Jesus rides out of the theater down through the audience on a white horse. So it's like, cool.
That is neat.
Yeah. Wow.
That is, well, and I think everybody can feel, even if you are watching and you're like, well, you're more on the secular end and you're like, I don't understand completely what you guys are talking about, but they still say they feel something, like something has shifted. And really around the time of COVID, really, I think people started really, starting to see a little bit more with their spiritual eyes. And then, so that something definitely happened during that time period. And then again, just last week, sadly, with the passing of Charlie Kirk, the brutal murder and assassination. And, him now being a martyr, and you're seeing all these people saying, okay, I'm rededicating my life to doing what Charlie Kirk did. I mean, this is huge.
From the evil, even just to your point, Jen, people who are not even on one, believing even, or believers, it's a lot of people who didn't believe at all, but just from seeing the evil coming out, I'm hearing that they're changing. And that's what times of revival are. It's normally in the darkest, most persecuted times. That's what shakes people to look up to. There's a need now to look up. So we are in it. We are entering the next wave of whatever, of this whole journey. Kingdom come, Bill. Yes.
I love this. Well, between Bill's journals which he's got a lot more than we do, Jordan.
Yeah. Yeah.
But with ours and your journals, we could probably do an entire mini series that only God knows how many episodes that could be. But seriously, what I do know is that God's bringing people together for such a time as this to get this information out. We're not writing this stuff down for no reason. There are times for revelation, and back to the name of our channel, Morning Star Revelation. I think that's part of what this platform is designed to do. And so, Bill, you've been a huge part of that just today with everything you've revealed about what you're doing. And the cool thing about this is Jordan and I are meeting people from all different walks of life with different callings. And, you know, all those 7 mountains of influence you mentioned earlier that Lance Walnew talks about, like, we're starting to meet people who had a vision from God and are walking it. Yes. And it's so inspiring to others that this is real. Yes, God is calling us to do these things. And again, it's our choice. We have to walk in obedience or, you know, miss out on that opportunity to do amazing things for God, for other people. And it's all about that obedience and relationship. So this is incredible. All right, Bill, in closing, tell everybody, I know you have an open house coming up. Tell everybody about a little bit about that. And again, about your website, where they can go to learn more.
So we're having an open house because people in the community have been asking us for a long time, like, what are you doing there? What are you doing? And I used to tell them, well, we're building a CIA black site back here. If you come here, you'll never leave. and that usually kept them away. But I don't know, all of a sudden it just felt like, let's open this up to community. So October 4th, at 11 o'clock at the Conemaugh Township Fire Department, we're inviting people to come in, and then we'll take them on a tour of the property, what we're doing here. One of the biggest things we want to reveal to them is there is acid water going into the wells in this community that people are drinking from, and want to show them what we're going to do to clean that up. Our website, I think you have posted there, is firepoint.energy. And you can sign up and get our newsletters. We send something out every month. A guy named Ian works for us, our communications guy, and he shoots out an email. What are we sending out this month? And we give an update, and he shoots it out. And, you know, I believe in keeping people updated. But interestingly enough, just a few days ago, I had a couple call up. Her father had passed. They sold his farm, and they wanted to invest. And we got to talking. And at the end of the conversation, I said, you know, I've really been feeling lately like God wants me to start telling the whole story. And she goes, that's what we're trying to tell you. And then here we are.
There we go. Wow. Well, and we'll end today with just saying we talked about it. Jordan and I discussed with Bill, everybody, we are going to be doing a mini series on how all this got started. And Bill, your fascinating journey to where you are today and how God was definitely in the details, big and small, even before you had that relationship with him. So
it wasn't fascinating living through it.
Well, that's part of the journey, unfortunately, and that needs to be told too, because it's not all sunshine and roses. Everybody, there's a very real hardship piece to this. You know, to gain this life, you have to lose your current one in a lot of ways. And Jordan and I call this process death to self. And so we can get into that a little bit with our own journeys as well. And again, this is just to educate and inform people, but also to inspire you, because it's totally worth it. I think we would all say that. But again, if we knew it at the beginning, we probably wouldn't have done it. And so that's why God does it in pieces.
That is why he doesn't show you the details. He gives the end piece, and that's it, because it's your hope. It's your hope to walk through it. And that's what prophecy actually is. A lot of prophecy, it's used for the building up and edifying. It's actually a lot of times when a word is spoken on a personal level, it's not where you are. It's calling forth what should be, what can be.
And realigning it.
Yes. So it's just,
My instructions go like this atypically, or typically, as Ian likes to correct me on. I was going to California for a conference with the International Christian Chamber of Commerce, Department of Commerce. And before I was getting ready for it, the Lord said, go buy hiking shoes, a backpack, and a winter coat. And I'm like, for what? He said, I want you to go to Colorado and sit on a rock. I was like, dude, the whole state's a rock, you know? And long story short is I landed from California, got on a flight the next morning. I flew to Denver, and I'm looking at a map and I see Boulder. That's a rock. And that was a whole encounter. And it's that childlike faith of, let's just go see.
Yes.
And that's what makes the journey fun, even though sometimes the journey sucks.
Yes.
But it's the journey.
That's it.
And that's where we get the power of our testimony.
Yes, Bill.
100%.
That's it.
Oh, guys, I hate to stop this because we're out of time. But all right, everybody, stay tuned until next time. We'll definitely be back with more with Jordan Oliver from the Olive Press. Also, be sure to check out her book, Drafted. If you don't have a personal relationship with God and that's something you want to learn more about, you can go to braidedcord.org, get the Drafted experience there. She has a workbook that goes with her book, Drafted. And check that out. And also, if you have little ones, and it's never too early to train up a child in the way they should go. So when they're old, they won't depart from it. And this is lulu.com. You can search Little Warriors Lullaby. I am the author, Jenness White. And it just teaches, it's a basic lullaby that teaches about the full armor of God and goes through each piece. And so adults and kiddos, grandparents would have fun with this, teaching your little ones about our commander-in-chief and the commander of heaven's armies, Jesus Christ. And so check that out as well. Bill, thank you so much. It has been a true honor and privilege having you on here today.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
All right, everybody. We hope this segment blesses you. And until next time, go in his shalom.